Hello artists. Today we're going to learn how to develop a value drawing with graphite. I had started drawing and taping and unfortunately forgot to turn on the power, and so halfway through I realized, oh no, all of my demos are done. So I started over with this tracing of the drawing. So what I want you to notice here is that I am looking at the different tonal shapes inside of my picture, and you have been provided with a number of pictures, all of which have a good distinction between lights and darks. And so right now I am dividing the areas of light and of dark, and I'm not worrying about, is it an eye, is it a nose, is it lips? And instead I am looking at patterns of light and dark. And by thinking about the shapes, or what we would call tonal shapes, of the lights and the darks in the different parts of the body, I will be able to get a much more realistic rendition of my image than if I block myself thinking, oh no, I don't know how to draw fabric, or I don't know how to draw faces. You will in fact end up with a much more realistic drawing if you take this approach. So whenever I'm looking at one of these shapes, I am thinking, is it wider or longer? Is it leaning towards the right or to the left? What I am doing now, as you can see, is after dividing my drawing into tonal shapes, I'm going to start by lightly filling in every single one of my shadow areas. Even when a shadow area has two colors, or lighter and darker areas, I'm just going to organize my drawing into a field of light and a field of dark. And you can see that as we begin to take this approach at organizing the drawing, that it already starts to give me a real sense of direction. Now, I haven't divided my drawing into categories of lights and darks yet. I'm basically saying all of the light is coming on the right side or the left side of the photo, and all of the right sides of my forms are in shadow. And so in a very rudimentary way, I am doing a form of planar analysis. What do I mean by this is I am saying the right plane is different from the left plane. Or for example, on the nose, I am saying the top of the nose is different from the bottom of the nose. And it might seem like a stupid, overly simplified thing to do, but it really helps in making the distinctions between our lights, our darks, and all of the in-between values. So you can see that I have made distinctions between the light and the dark. And so this harkens back to our Notan assignment. So I'm treating, at this point, I've been treating this like a Notan. And now I am coming in with my number 3 value. Notice that I am leaving that core of the shadow cast under the hood that the girl is wearing. I am leaving it distinct. I have a hard edge there. So one of the things that we are looking for in a developed value drawing is soft and hard edges between our values. So I have gone from a light and dark like Notan to now showing my number 3, which is my darkest values. Now all along I've only been using 2 pencils. The 2 pencils that come in our kit, a number 2B and a number 4B. And where I want a lightest value, I am using my 2B very lightly. And wherever I want my darkest values, I switch to my number 4. The only eraser I have been using throughout is my gum eraser, my kneaded eraser, which can be kneaded into my hand and shaped. So you will see that at one point I squeeze it really thin to create a nice light value. I want you to notice that I have not tried to replicate the black background here. It would be too hard. I actually think that it makes this photo ugly to have it be so dark. Instead, I want to have a contrast. So the recommendation is always that on the light side of your form, you have a darker ground. And on the dark side of your form, or the shadow side, you have a lighter ground. So that there is a contrast between your drawn form in the foreground, your positive shape, and the background, which is your negative shape. Now I am starting to create a harder edge between the cast shadow of the nose and the nasolabial fold. And I'm just going to keep layering my number 4 pencil wherever I want it to grow darker. Notice I am putting a hard edge between the fabric and the temple and cheek, because it's going to help to distinguish one plane from the other. But if I want my drawing to look very atmospheric and closer to the truth of this plaster cast, then I want to have more soft edges than hard edges. And this is a pretty important thing for you to remember. Look back at your assignment sheet and at the diagrams that I have placed there for you of the 6 categories of light. After you have used sighting and measuring to create the overall pencil composition, you go in and you create tonal shapes, dividing your form, your still life, into areas of light and areas of dark. Then you come in and block out your darkest values, your cast shadows. Now we'll add a 3rd value to your drawing. You go in and start adding some of the softer transitions of light and dark in the light areas. And after you've developed those, you come in and start to make distinctions between umbra, penumbra, core, shadow, reflected light in the dark areas. And before you know it, the majority of the drawing will have bloomed before your very eyes. You want to keep working the lights and darks. Go in and refine hard and soft edges. One thing to remember is you want to keep and save your hardest edges and your sharpest line work for those planes and forms that are closest to the viewer. So for example, the neck and the collar, the edge of that hoodie or scarf on her head, the edges of the jaw and chin, these are closer to us as viewers. And so here we can have our sharpest line work. I had to go in and put some more values in that background so that I could get a nice crisp light edge to the back of her hoodie handkerchief, which is giving me some really secondary light. The light is being bounced off on the right hand side to give a more rounded look to her head and jaw and neck. And so I needed to have a little bit of value there. I keep going back in, creating my highlights in light areas. Hard to see from a distance, but there's very soft transitions in the areas of the white with very minute amounts of graphite deposited to get my number 2 or quarter tone. I'm going in now on the shadow and adding some more of the darker darks inside of folds in the fabric. And even after this drawing demo is finished, I'll come back in and do a little bit more refinement. But I wanted to give you a feeling for how to begin and how to develop a drawing of this nature. You begin with light contours using siding, then tonal shapes, divided into a Notan, adding the darkest tonal shapes for your number 3s, and from that point onward, softly developing both the light sides and the dark sides of the drawing to get a complete rendition of the image that you're working on. Well, artists, I wish you the best of luck, and I can't wait to see what you create.